Hello, my name is Elowen Cade, and I have a question for you. What would you do if everything you worked for, everything you built with your own hands, was stolen from you by the very people who were supposed to love you? I saved my family's restaurant. I spent years pouring my blood, sweat, and every waking moment into making it a success. And when I finally turned it around, made it profitable, saved it from collapse, my father looked me in the eye and said, "Your sister will take over now." Just like that. No gratitude, no recognition, no acknowledgement of the sacrifices I made. But worse than the betrayal was the realization. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't an accident. They never planned to let me lead. They only planned to use me. I thought it was over that night, that I had lost. But I was wrong. Because if they thought I would disappear quietly, they had no idea who they were dealing with. Want to know what happened next? Keep watching. I stepped into the dining room, expecting recognition, maybe even a nod of approval. Instead, I was about to be erased from my own legacy. The chandelier's golden glow illuminated the pristine table setting, but the air was thick, suffocating, charged with something sharp enough to cut. I had dressed for the occasion, navy dress, pearl earrings, hair sleek in a bun. I had imagined this night differently. My father, Magnus Cade, acknowledging what I had done, how I had saved Cade's Prime from the brink of irrelevance. But the moment I sat down, I knew something was wrong. Velis sat across from me, swirling her wine, smirking. My mother's hands were folded in her lap, knuckles white. My father, ever composed, cut into his steak as if this were just another meal. "Let's get to it," Magnus said, dabbing his mouth. "There's going to be a change in management at Cade's Prime." I straightened. This was it. Finally, he would acknowledge my work. "Velis will be stepping up as the new CEO." The words hit like a gunshot. I blinked. Surely I had misheard him. "What?" My voice was steady, but my fingers tightened on the napkin in my lap. Magnus exhaled, like he was dealing with a stubborn child. "It makes the most sense. Velis understands the industry. She has presence, connections. You're great with numbers, Elowen, but leading a company takes more than spreadsheets and analytics." Velis chuckled, setting her glass down with infuriating delicacy. "Don't take it personally. Dad just needs someone who can actually command respect." The room blurred. My breath stalled. "You can't be serious," I said, my voice slicing through the polished pretense of civility. "I built the campaign that turned Cade's Prime around. Before that, you were months from shutting down. Magnus raised a hand, silencing me effortlessly. "Let's not get emotional," I swallowed hard. "This isn't emotion. This is reality. You're handing my work, my success, to her?" I gestured toward Velis, who looked amused. "Velis has leadership qualities," Magnus said smoothly. "She knows how to network, how to build relationships. You're brilliant, Elowen, but leadership isn't just about results. It's about charisma, influence, and she has it." I laughed, humorless. "She hasn't lifted a damn finger for this company." Velis sighed, inspecting her nails. "That's not fair. Shut up," I snapped. "You did nothing. You sat back while I worked myself into the ground, and now you're reaping the benefits." "Enough!" Magnus's voice was final. "The decision is made." A sickening weight settled in my chest. It was never about merit, never about effort. It was about control. Magnus reached into his pocket, pulled out his wallet, and tossed a $100 bill onto the table. "For your contributions." The insult landed like a slap. $100. For years of dedication, for the nights spent perfecting strategies, for crafting the campaign that saved us. Silence stretched. My mother shifted but said nothing. She never did. I reached for the bill, fingers brushing the crisp paper. Slowly, I folded it into the napkin on my lap. I stood. Magnus sighed. "Don't be dramatic." I smiled, cold and controlled. "I'm not. I'm excusing myself," Velis chuckled. "That's probably for the best." I turned and walked out. No slamming doors, no yelling, no begging. I simply left. Let them think they had won. Let them believe I would disappear quietly. They had no idea what was coming next. The city moved on as if nothing had happened. Yellow cabs weaved through traffic, coffee vendors called out orders, and the scent of fresh bagels and burnt espresso filled the air. But for me, the world had changed overnight. I sat alone in the cafe that used to feel like a second home. This was where my team and I had brainstormed, laughed over ridiculous ideas, and celebrated victories. But today, the energy was different. The chair across from me, where Orson always sat, was empty. The usual banter was gone. I had lost everything. Clutching my coffee, I clung to the hope that this was some mistake. That illusion shattered the moment I glanced at my phone. Velas Cade, the mastermind behind Cade's Prime's turnaround, unveils bold new vision for the future. My breath caught. I clicked the article, scanning words that should have been about me. With a revolutionary marketing strategy, Velas Cade has proven herself a force in the culinary industry. Her innovative approach to digital branding saved the restaurant from collapse. Now, under her leadership, I stopped reading. The coffee cup in my hand trembled. I placed it down before I shattered it. She had taken everything, not just my position, not just my future. She stole my work, the campaign, the sleepless nights, the meticulous planning, and now she was standing in front of cameras, smiling like she had bled for it. The article included a photo of her mid-laugh, radiant in an emerald dress. The caption read, "A visionary in the making." That should have been me. My phone vibrated. A message from Orson. "We need to talk." I grabbed my coat and left. Orson was already seated when I arrived at his office. No grin, no light joke, just tension. He exhaled heavily. "I'm sorry, Elowen." I sat, arms crossed. "Tell me you didn't know." His hesitation was answer enough. "How long?" He ran a hand through his hair. "Magnus called a few weeks ago, said they were restructuring, said you'd be moving on." I laughed, hollow. "Moving on? That's what they're calling it? You know how this works. Magnus is untouchable. If I pushed back, I would have been out too." "You should have been out." My voice sharpened. "You knew I built this." "I know," he said quietly. "But I have a family, a mortgage. I couldn't risk it." I stared at him. The man who once swore we were in this together was just another person willing to watch them erase me. I stood. "I won't forget this." He looked away. "I didn't think you would." That evening, I met Irindis at a quiet rooftop bar. She hugged me, and for a brief moment, I let myself believe someone was still on my side. "I don't know what to do," I whispered. She sighed. "I wish I could tell you this wasn't happening, but you saw the news." "I saw?" She hesitated. "Elowen, if I take your side, Magnus will blacklist me. I'll never work in marketing again." I already knew the answer. "You're staying!" Tears welled in her eyes. "I'm so sorry." The apology was real, but it didn't change her choice. I nodded. "Take care, Irindis." "Elowen!" But I was already walking away. The neon lights of Times Square flickered. The streets pulsed with life. But I wasn't part of it. I was nowhere. I had built something real, something that mattered. And in one night, they took it all. My father, my sister, my closest friends. I had nothing. But maybe that meant I had nothing left to fear. I stared at the email, my mind refusing to process the words in front of me. Subject, legal notice. Cade's Prime, VC, Elowen, Cade. I clicked on the attachment, my breath shallow as the official document loaded on my screen. Cease and desist. Intellectual property theft. Breach of contract. They were suing me. For my own work. My stomach turned, a slow rolling sickness spreading through me. I had lost my job, my allies, my dignity. But I had thought, at the very least, that I still had my integrity. That no matter how cruel they were, Magnus and Velas wouldn't sink to this. But of course, I had underestimated them. I gripped the edges of my laptop, my knuckles white. The cold glow of the screen cast eerie shadows in my dimly lit apartment. The air was heavy, suffocating, like the walls were closing in. I scrolled through the lawsuit, my vision blurring as I skimmed the accusations. Plaintiff asserts that defendant unlawfully misappropriated proprietary marketing materials and strategic business plans developed by Cade's Prime, thereby engaging in deliberate and malicious intent to exploit company assets for personal gain. It was laughable. They had stolen from me every campaign, every strategy. They wouldn't even have a company to fight over if not for me. And yet, here they were, rewriting history, turning me into the villain. My hands trembled as I reached for my phone. I didn't even think before dialing. Magnus answered on the second ring. "Elowin," he greeted, his voice as smooth as ever. "I assume you got the notice." I clenched my jaw. "You son of a bitch!" A low sigh. "Watch your mouth." "Watch my—" I let out a short, hollow laugh. "You're suing me for my own work, Magnus. Do you even hear yourself?" "It's not personal," he said evenly. "It's business. You know how this works." I squeezed my eyes shut, pressing my fingers to my temple. No, this is personal. You stole from me. You humiliated me. And now you want to destroy me?" "Destroy you?" He chuckled, as if I were being ridiculous. "You're overreacting." "Don't gaslight me, Magnus." My voice was shaking now, but not from fear, from rage. "You took everything, and now you're trying to make sure I can never rebuild. You always did let your emotions get the best of you," he mused. "This is why you were never leadership material, Elowin. A real leader doesn't break under pressure." I sucked in a sharp breath. There it was, the final confirmation that this man, my father, had never believed in me, had never seen me as worthy. "I should have seen it sooner," I whispered. "This was never about me not being capable. It was about control. You needed to be the one pulling the strings, and when I proved I could stand on my own, you cut me down." There was a pause. Then, with an air of detachment, he said, "I did what was best for the company." "Best for the company," I repeated, the words like acid in my mouth. "You mean best for you, because God forbid I prove I could succeed without you." "Are you done?" he asked, his patience wearing thin. I exhaled slowly, a dangerous calm settling over me. "Yeah," I said, "I'm done." A beat of silence. Then, the faintest amusement in his tone. "I doubt that." And then, he hung up. I stared at my phone, my chest rising and falling with shaky breaths. I had spent my whole life fighting for a place in this family, trying to earn their respect, trying to prove that I belonged. But they had never wanted me to succeed. They wanted me to submit. A slow, chilling realization settled over me. I had been playing their game, trying to fight for what was already mine, trying to reclaim something that had never truly belonged to me in the first place. But I wasn't going to do that anymore. They had taken everything from me, which meant I had nothing left to lose. I stood, my hands steady now, my mind sharp with a newfound clarity. If they wanted war, I'd give them one. The first thing I noticed when I woke up wasn't the sunlight or the city noise. It was the silence. No notifications, no investor calls, no meeting confirmations. Then I saw it. A headline, bold and merciless. "The Bitter Heiress, Elowin Cade's Desperate Attempt to Tear Down Cade's Prime." My stomach twisted as I scrolled. Once a promising figure in the culinary world, Elowin Cade has taken a shocking turn, suing her own family in what insiders call a petty revenge scheme. Sources claim that after failing to secure a leadership role, she lashed out, trying to dismantle the company that gave her a career. An old press photo accompanied it. Me, mid-blink, looking exhausted, almost unhinged. The quotes that followed painted me as arrogant, selfish, unstable. She was never a team player. Elowin always thought she was smarter than everyone else. She walked away when things didn't go her way. Now she wants to take the company down with her. Dread thickened in my chest as I clicked article after article. It wasn't just one. They were everywhere. Every major business outlet, every industry blog, even food influencers had picked it up. My inbox was flooded with rejection emails, investors reconsidering their position. I had been blacklisted. By noon, I learned who was behind it. Lucius Grant, Cade's Prime's head of PR. I imagined him at his desk, sipping his overpriced espresso while orchestrating my downfall. He was good. Because the best lies weren't fabrications. They were twisted truths. Had I left in anger? Yes. Had I lashed out? Absolutely. Had I refused to stay silent? Without a doubt. But none of that made me the villain they wanted me to be. I paced my apartment, my mind screaming at me to fight. But the reality settled in like cement. No one was coming to my defense. Orson was silent. Arindis had made her choice. The people I had worked beside for years weren't risking their careers for me. I was alone. I dialed Magnus. I shouldn't have. I knew it was a mistake before he even answered. Elawan, he greeted smoothly. I was wondering when I'd hear from you. You did this. He chuckled. Did what? The articles, the interviews. You turned me into your villain. A pause. Then amusement lacing his voice. You did that all on your own. My grip tightened on the phone. This is warfare, Magnus. Business, he corrected. Nothing personal. I laughed, sharp and humorless. Like suing your own daughter was just business? Like letting Valus steal my work was business? Careful, Elowen, he warned, voice smooth. You're getting emotional. Again. Again. Like I was a child throwing a tantrum. I inhaled sharply, my voice dropping to a deadly calm. You think destroying me will stop me from fighting back, but Magnus, I smiled. You always underestimate me. A pause, then a lazy chuckle. Do I? I didn't answer. Instead, I whispered, if you don't stop, I'll burn it all down. Empty threats don't suit you, sweetheart. This isn't a threat. My fingers curled around my phone. It's a promise. He exhaled, almost bored. You always overestimate yourself. And then the line went dead. I stood there, gripping my phone long after he was gone, my pulse thudding in my ears. For years, I had believed that if I worked hard enough, he would see my worth. But Magnus never saw me. Only what I could be used for. I glanced at the open articles on my screen, my own face staring back, with words twisted into something unrecognizable. They thought they could destroy me with lies. I'd show them the truth, and it would ruin them. They thought they had me cornered. They thought their lies would bury me. But they forgot. I built Cade's Prime, and I knew exactly where the skeletons were buried. The city pulsed outside my window, but in my apartment, time stood still. Papers littered the floor, my laptop bathed in a cold blue glow, illuminating financial reports, archived contracts, proof of their betrayal. Then, just as exhaustion threatened to win, I found it. A contract, one that should have never seen the light of day. Confidential agreement. My pulse spiked. 2 months before they pushed me out, Magnus had already planned the transition. Before he called me not leadership material. Before Valise smiled across the dinner table, already knowing my fate. They had paid a PR firm to rewrite history, to erase my name and fabricate a narrative where she was the mastermind behind Cade's Prime's revival. It wasn't just betrayal, it was fraud. I dialed Orson. He picked up on the third ring. Elawan, I told you, I can't. I have proof, I cut in. Documents, transactions. I can take them down. Silence. Then a sigh. You sure? I closed my eyes, gripping the phone tighter. Yes. Another pause. If this goes public, they won't just back down, he warned. They'll fight. Hard. I'm counting on it. Meet me at the usual spot in an hour. The cafe was nearly empty, dimly lit. I spotted Orson immediately. Same tired eyes, same nervous energy. But next to him sat someone I hadn't seen in years. Soren Draven, once Cade's Prime's head chef, discarded when they needed a modern, marketable face. If anyone understood being erased, it was him. I sat down. I assume you both want to see them burn. Orson looked away. Soren grinned. Damn right. Good. I turned my laptop toward them. This contract proves Magnus and Valus paid to rewrite history. If we leak this, they'll have to answer for it. Orson shook his head. You don't just leak something like this. You strategize. Magnus controls the media. If we do this, we have to be airtight. Soren leaned forward. What else do you have? I hesitated, then opened another file. A financial report, buried deep. A falsified cost-cutting strategy under Valus's name. A fabricated success story. Soren let out a whistle. Well, damn, I nodded. If this gets out, investors will pull out. Lawsuits will pile up. Orson rubbed his face. You're playing with fire, Eloan. I met his gaze. I'm setting the fire. Silence stretched. Then Orson nodded. Soren chuckled. Let's burn the bastards down. I closed the laptop, my pulse steady, my mind razor-sharp. It was time to strike. Orson ran a hand through his hair. We need to be careful. If we move too fast, Magnus will twist the narrative before we even get a chance to expose him. I nodded. But something wasn't sitting right. I had spent years studying Magnus, watching how he played the game. He didn't just react, he planned. He always knew his opponent's next move before they made it. And yet, here I was, sitting on the very evidence that could tear his empire apart, and I had the gut-wrenching feeling that he already knew. Soren leaned forward. What's wrong? I stood abruptly, crossing the room, my mind racing. Think about it. We just found the one document that can obliterate Cade's prime, but we've been gathering intel for weeks. Why did it come together so easily now? Orson frowned. You think someone set you up? I turned to Arindis. You still have access to our team's shared drive, right? She nodded, pulling out her phone. I watched as her fingers flew over the screen. A few moments later, her face paled. Shit. I stepped closer. What? She turned the phone toward me. A recently accessed file. The exact same report I had pulled up just minutes ago. Except, it wasn't accessed from my laptop. Someone else had been in it. I clenched my jaw. Who the hell? And then the notification popped up. Jasper Lowe. Accessed 3 minutes ago. Soren cursed under his breath. Orson exhaled sharply, shaking his head. We have a leak. A traitor. Inside my own team. Everything clicked into place. Magnus wasn't reacting. He was waiting. Because someone had been feeding him our every move. I turned back to the group, my voice sharp. Find Jasper, now! We found him an hour later. Jasper was exactly where I expected him to be, at a cheap bar downtown, drowning himself in whiskey. He didn't even look surprised when he saw me. You figured it out faster than I thought, he muttered, swirling his drink. I sat down across from him, folding my arms. Why? Jasper let out a short, humorless laugh. Why do you think? Magnus pays better. And unlike you, he doesn't fight battles he can't win. Orson and Soren flanked me, silent but seething. I kept my expression blank. So that's what this was? You took my plans and handed them to him, like a good little Jasper's lip curled. You don't get it, Eloan. They'll always win. You were never meant to lead. A slow, cold smile spread across my lips. Funny. That's exactly what they said before I burned their empire to the ground. His jaw twitched. I stood, sliding a piece of paper across the table. He glanced down, confused. Then his face fell. It was his termination letter. Effective immediately. Signed, notarized, and circulated to every high-end restaurant and marketing firm in the industry. You work for Magnus now, right? I leaned down, my voice soft but lethal. Let's see if he cares enough to save your career. I turned and walked out, my heels clicking against the tile. Behind me, Jasper shouted something, but I wasn't listening anymore. If they thought I'd crumble over one traitor, they underestimated me. Now? It was personal. They had stolen from me, lied about me, planted a spy in my own ranks. But now, it was my turn to strike, and I wouldn't stop until the whole world saw them for what they really were. The Culinary Excellence Awards were the pinnacle of the industry, a night where the biggest names in fine dining gathered, where deals were made, reputations cemented, and careers launched. It was also the perfect place to burn Cade's prime to the ground. The ballroom at the Ritz was a masterpiece of opulence, gold chandeliers casting soft light over sleek tables, the scent of aged wine, and delicately plated hors d'oeuvres hanging in the air. Men in sharp tuxedos, women in designer gowns, and at the center of it all, standing smugly at the podium, was Magnus Cade, my father, the industry's visionary, the man who had built a kingdom on my back and then discarded me like I was nothing. The applause as he took the stage was thunderous. Cameras flashed. Investors leaned forward in their seats, eager to bask in the glow of Cade's Prime's continued success. Magnus smiled, slow, composed, confident. "It is an honor to be recognized tonight," he began, his voice smooth, practiced. "When I started this journey, I envisioned something greater than just a restaurant. I envisioned a legacy." I stood. The room went silent. Eyes turned. Murmurs spread like wildfire. I walked toward the stage, heels clicking against the polished floor, every step measured. I saw Velis sitting at a VIP table, her fingers tightening around the stem of her champagne glass. Next to her, Lucius Grant, their PR hitman, had gone rigid. Magnus, to his credit, barely flinched. He merely tilted his head, amusement flickering in his eyes. "Well, well," he mused, his voice carrying across the room. "Elowen, here to congratulate your family? A cruel jab, designed to frame me as the jealous, bitter daughter?" I smiled, sweet, slow. Then I reached into my clutch, pulled out a stack of papers, and held them up for everyone to see. "I'm here to tell the truth." Magnus's smile tightened. "Now isn't the time for personal grievances." "You're right," I cut in, turning toward the crowd. "This isn't about personal grievances. It's about fraud." Gasps rippled through the audience. Journalists perked up. Phones were already being raised, recording. I stepped forward, voice unwavering. "My father, Magnus Cade, would have you believe that Cade's Prime is a symbol of excellence, that his leadership is the reason for its success." I held up the documents. "But what if I told you this entire brand was built on lies?" A journalist stood. "What are you saying, Miss Cade?" I turned slightly, making sure Magnus saw the ice in my expression. "I'm saying my father didn't revitalize Cade's Prime." "I did. I developed the marketing strategies that saved this company. And when I was done, they stole my work, erased my contributions, and rewrote history to make Velis the genius behind it all." Magnus let out a low chuckle, shaking his head. "Elowen, I know you're upset, but making baseless accusations." "Baseless?" I barked out a sharp laugh. Then I threw the documents onto the podium in front of him. The pages fanned out. Copies of emails, financial reports, the confidential PR contract that detailed exactly how they manufactured Velis's success. "This is what baseless looks like?" I shot back. The crowd exploded. "Jesus Christ, are these real?" "Wait, she's saying they faked the entire thing?" "Someone get a camera on that contract." A journalist snatched up the papers, skimming through them furiously. His eyes widened. "Holy! This states that Cade's Prime paid to rewrite history." Magnus slammed his hand against the podium, his composure cracking. "That's enough!" But it was too late. The audience wasn't looking at him anymore. They were looking at me. Velis surged to her feet. "This is slander!" she shrieked. "None of this proves anything." Soren Draven, standing near the back, let out a sharp laugh. "You really want to go there, sweetheart?" All eyes turned to him as he held up his own set of documents. "Because I've got a whole file on your fake cost-cutting strategies, too." Velis paled. Lucius Grant, their PR mastermind, was already walking toward the exit. He knew the game was up. And Magnus? For the first time in his life, he looked afraid. Investors were whispering among themselves. Journalists were snapping photos, recording every second of this disaster. His empire was crumbling, and he knew it. I took a slow step toward him, lowering my voice so only he could hear. "You should have left me alone, Dad," I said, my voice like ice. "But you made the mistake of erasing me." I leaned in just enough to see the sweat beating at his temple. "Now, I'm erasing you." The walls around them were crumbling, and I wasn't done yet. Magnus had spent a lifetime building his empire, and I had spent years believing I needed to be part of it. But as I stood there, watching the cracks widen, I knew. I wasn't here to reclaim anything. I was here to bury it. The morning after the gala, Cades Prime's headquarters was a war zone. Phones rang off the hook. Executives whispered in frantic huddles. The once immaculate conference room was now littered with printouts of news articles, emails, financial statements, evidence that Magnus's empire wasn't just shaking, it was collapsing. The fraud was undeniable now. The media had torn through the documents I had exposed, dissecting every fabricated number, every manufactured headline. Investors were bailing fast. None of them wanted their names attached to a company now synonymous with corporate deception. And at the center of it all, in his pristine glass office, stood Magnus Cade, watching his world burn. I stepped inside without knocking. He turned. His eyes, for the first time, weren't sharp with condescension or smug control. They were tired. I shut the door behind me, my heels clicking against the cold marble floor. "How's the damage control going?" He exhaled through his nose, slow, measured. "You always did have a flair for spectacle, Elowen." "Funny, that's what people are saying about you right now," I shot back. "Lying to the entire industry? Bold move, Magnus. Shame it backfired." He moved toward his desk, picking up a folder, flipping through it as if he still had some semblance of control. "This will pass," he said flatly. "A few well-placed press releases, some strategic restructuring. It's over, Dad." I cut him off before he could finish the lie. I walked forward, placing a single page in front of him. He froze. His eyes scanned the words, the final death sentence for Cades Prime. A notice from Augustine Rell, the company's largest investor, officially pulling funding. Rell's name carried weight in the industry. The moment he walked, others would follow. Magnus's hands tightened around the paper. "This can be reversed," he muttered, though even he didn't sound convinced. "I can talk to him." "No, Magnus," I said, stepping closer. "You can't." He slowly lifted his gaze to meet mine. For the first time in my life, I saw uncertainty in his eyes. I leaned in slightly, my voice soft but razor-sharp. "This company was never as strong as you thought. It wasn't built on leadership, it was built on control. And now, without it, you have nothing." A long silence stretched between us. Then his voice dropped. "Help me fix this." I blinked. For a moment, I thought I had misheard him. "Excuse me?" I asked, tilting my head. His jaw clenched, but the words were already out there. "You said it yourself. You're the one who built this company's success. You can still—" A sharp, harsh laugh escaped my lips. "You want my help?" I took a step back, shaking my head. "After everything you did? After stealing from me, humiliating me, suing me?" His mouth opened, then shut. He was still searching for an angle, still trying to manipulate, still clinging to some last, desperate hope that I wanted this enough to save him. And that's when I knew. He hadn't learned a thing. I leaned in, just close enough for my voice to drop to an icy whisper. "You were never meant to lead, Magnus." His breath hitched. I smiled. "And now?" "You never will again." I turned, heading for the door. Behind me, I heard papers hit the desk, the sound of his frustration, his denial, but he didn't call my name, because even he knew there was nothing left to say. As I stepped out of Cades Prime for the last time, I felt no sadness, no regret, only freedom. And for the first time, my future was truly mine. For so long, I had defined myself by what they took from me. Now, for the first time, I stood on my own, Not as Magnus Cade's daughter, not as Cade's Prime's former savior, but as something entirely new. The past few weeks had been a blur of rebuilding, reimagining, and finally, reclaiming my future. The storm of Cade's Prime's downfall had settled, leaving behind a fractured empire and a family that had once ruled without question. And yet, as I stood at the threshold of my new beginning, I knew the past wasn't quite done with me yet. The sign above the entrance read, Cade and Company. Not Cade's Prime. Not Cade Family Dining. Just me. The grand opening of my restaurant wasn't meant to be an event. It wasn't about spectacle or proving anything to anyone. But as I looked around the dining room, filled with familiar faces, Orson, Arindis, Soren, and the loyal staff who had walked away from Magnus, I felt something close to peace for the first time in years. Gone was the suffocating weight of expectations. Gone was the need to be worthy of my father's name. Because I wasn't his anymore. I was mine. I should have known they would come. The soft chime of the restaurant door opening made me turn. And when I saw them, standing just beyond the threshold, my heart didn't race. My breath didn't catch. I felt nothing. Magnus and Velis. Once their presence would have shaken me. I would have scrambled for control, braced myself for another battle. But now, they were just two people from my past, strangers in familiar skin. Velis was the first to speak, her voice sharper than usual, like she was clinging to whatever shreds of power she had left. "So this is what you've been doing?" She gestured around the restaurant, her smile thin. "This little place?" I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Magnus stepped forward, slower, his movements more measured. He looked older, though it had only been a few weeks since the last time I saw him. The collapse of his empire had taken its toll, but the man who had once commanded every room he entered now seemed small. "You proved your point," he said, his voice quieter than I had ever heard it. "You won, Elowen." I tilted my head. Did I? His jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. Instead, he exhaled, glancing around at the restaurant. "You built something," he admitted, and for a moment, there was something almost genuine in his expression. "I underestimated you." A lifetime ago, those words would have meant everything to me. But now, standing here, I realized they didn't matter at all. I smiled. Not out of victory, not out of spite, just because I finally understood the truth. "I didn't do this to prove you wrong, Magnus," I said. "I did this to prove myself right." Silence stretched between us. I saw it then, the first flicker of true defeat in his eyes. Not because I had destroyed his company, not because I had exposed his empire for what it really was, but because I didn't need him anymore, and that, more than anything else, was a loss he could never recover from. Velis scoffed, crossing her arms. "Are we supposed to congratulate you?" I turned toward her, my expression neutral. "You can do whatever you want, Velis." "It doesn't matter to me." Her mouth pressed into a thin line. She hated that she no longer had the power to get under my skin. Magnus ran a hand through his graying hair, his shoulders lowering just slightly. "Is there anything left to say here?" I studied him for a long moment, then shook my head. "No, I don't think there is." He gave a small nod, acknowledgement, or maybe acceptance. Then, without another word, he turned and walked toward the door. Velis hesitated, her fingers twitching at her side like she wanted to say something else. But in the end, she followed him out. And just like that, they were gone. As I stood there, watching the door slowly close behind them, I waited for the flood of emotions, the relief, the sadness, the closure. But what I felt was simple. Freedom. For years, I had wanted their approval. Now I didn't need it. And that was the greatest victory of all. I turned back toward my restaurant. My life. I had spent years chasing something that had never been mine to begin with. Now I was done chasing. I was ready to build something entirely my own. For years, I believed that hard work, loyalty, and dedication would always be enough. That if I proved myself, if I gave everything, my family would recognize my worth. But I was wrong. Life doesn't always reward the most deserving. Sometimes the ones who take shortcuts, manipulate, or inherit power win by default, not because they earned it, but because they were handed it. But here's the truth. You don't need their approval. You don't need their validation. You are more than what they think of you. If this story has taught me anything, it's that when people try to erase you, dismiss you, silence you, let that be your motivation. Not to seek revenge, not to prove them wrong, but to prove yourself right. I didn't fight to reclaim what was stolen. I fought to build something better. And in the end, that's the real victory. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever been overlooked, underestimated, or cast aside by the very people who should have supported you? How did you handle it? Did you fight back? Did you walk away? Share your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your story. And if this video resonated with you, drop a 1 in the comments or tell me where you're watching from. If you didn't like it, tell me why. I value all perspectives. Most importantly, don't forget to subscribe. If you love stories that challenge, inspire, and push you to think differently, hit that button and turn on notifications. Because trust me, there's more to come. Your story isn't over yet.